A good life is a life built around fulfilling work, play, relationships, and lifelong learning. Welcome to Good Life Conversations, where we explore the stories and strategies of inspiring everyday people who are striving to create a life of purpose, meaning, and connection. Hi there, and welcome to this Good Life Conversation. My name is Jay. I'm your host and the founder of Discover Year, and today's guest is Alex Keenan. Welcome, Alex.
Hello, good to be here.
So Alex is as I believe she said before, recovering lawyer, and she used to be a lawyer. She went to law school. She now is a public speaking coach and facilitator at her own company, which is called Stage-Light Communications. She's a facilitator and coach at Discover Year as well, has been for a number of years, 5, somewhere in that range, 6. It's been a while. It's been a while. So Alex has worked with a lot of our students in the past. She's an awesome facilitator. And so it still remains to be seen how we met, but Alex believes that we were introduced by a colleague of hers. I thought we met at TEDx in 2018, but who knows? We don't know for sure. Maybe someday we'll know. So Alex, we'd like to start with the same question every time. And you've had this very recent, very exciting experience of hiking through New Zealand for the better part of 6 months, if not longer. And obviously your days look different there. But now we'd like to talk about, what's a typical day for you? What time do you get up? How many hours do you work? What does that work look like? How do you wind down the day? What time do you go to bed? So feel free to tell us about your kind of more entrepreneurial lifestyle right now, and then a little bit about when you were hiking.
Yeah. So I'm not sure there is a typical day for me. I kind of have 2 typical days as a facilitator and an instructor. There are days when I am kind of on delivering a training or a facilitation, in which case I'm in a group of people or on Zoom doing something, or there are days when I'm kind of working more independently in my home office. And those days might include, meeting one-on-one with clients, having some other meetings, doing administrative work, putting together, videos and things like that. And I try to kind of alternate those because I'm a bit of an introvert. And so I love the facilitation days, but they can kind of mess with my energy. And so I like to follow one of those days with an independent work day when I can control my own schedule and have a little bit of peace. But I can't have too many of those days in a row either, because then I get into a rut. So I try to alternate them as best I can. So on days when I'm facilitating, I'll usually get up a little bit earlier, 7 o'clock or earlier, have some tea, review what I need to do that day. I tend to kind of hyper focus while I'm facilitating. And so I get really, really into what I'm doing. And then when I pull back at the end of the day, I'm usually exhausted. So I'll have a really simple dinner, maybe listen to a podcast while I tidy up, watch some Netflix or something with my partner. And then before I go to bed, which 10 or 11 o'clock usually is when I try to go to bed, I read fiction, always fiction, because that helps me kind of disconnect from all the things that my brain might be, chewing on that might keep me up at night. If it's fiction, I can say, okay, this isn't real. I can just enjoy it. And that helps me relax and go to sleep. On the days when I'm doing more independent work, I get up a little bit later, like 7:30-ish. I'm not much of a morning person, so I like to have a cup of tea and breakfast, go in my backyard and kind of wander around a bit. Before I left on my trip, I was regularly lifting weights at home. I'm trying to get back into that. It's a slow process. There was a certain level of discipline that I had to follow when I was hiking, which I'll talk about later. I've kind of let go of a lot of that discipline since I got back. So I'm trying to get back into my workouts. And I like to take breaks during the day. If it's nice, my partner and I will go ride our bikes. And then I usually try to finish work around 5 or 6, put in kind of like a standard work day. And then, the usual evening.
You're not the first person to specifically name the fact that you read fiction books while trying to fall asleep or before you go to sleep. Do you read those like physical books, paper books? Do you read them on your phone, on a tablet? What do you do?
Physical books. Yeah.
Okay.
I like the sensation and not having, the backlight for reading on the phone. Actually, my phone doesn't go in my bedroom ever. My phone stays outside of the bedroom and it doesn't wake me up. I don't hear notifications while I'm trying to sleep or relax.
And is that a new habit that you've had, or no?
No, that is, I never wanted to, to have that distraction there. When I was in university, I went on exchange and lived in a dorm room for a while. And so my only space was my bedroom. But other than that, no, I've never wanted to have that distraction of my cell phone in my
Hmm.
room.
I
Yeah.
bet there's a lot of people who would like to not want to have their phone with them because that's I think people understand that it's not good, but they are
Mm.
tied to it. So that's great, great practice.
So, it's so funny, and I guess I'm kind of showing my age here, but when I graduated from high school, cell phones were still kind of new, and I didn't want one. My parents made me get one so they could keep tabs on me, and I
Mm,
didn't want it. And, of course, over time, I've become really dependent on it as a tool and as a distraction. But, I kind of, in my formative years, didn't have that and had to be talked into getting one. And I think that has kind of helped to have a
mm.
healthier relationship with it.
Yeah. Oh, the irony, being talked into getting a phone by your
Yeah.
parents. That doesn't happen a
Yeah.
lot anymore, I don't think.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd love to chat a little bit about this idea that you mentioned earlier, which caught my attention, is you said, hey, those days where I'm working with people can, throw my energy off a bit because I'm introverted. So I have to ask the question, given the line of work that you've engaged in now as a entrepreneur, working with people, facilitating events, how did it come to be that you sought that out as an introvert? It seems like that's a bit oxymoronic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was kind of a weird and almost accidental path. So I used to practice law, and there were a lot of things that I didn't like about that. But one thing that I discovered while practicing law was I was really good at sitting with someone who was having trouble, expressing themselves. I worked with people who had been through actually some pretty horrible and traumatic life events, and so I could sit with someone, help them feel safe to share their story. And I left the practice of law just because I burned out. It wasn't a good fit for me. The lifestyle in private law practice can be really stressful. And I just at one point went, I can't do this anymore. It's affecting my mental health. And I walked away. And I won't get into the whole story. I kind of started on this entrepreneurial journey. And then at one point, someone said to me, "Hey, have you ever thought about offering public speaking classes? I think you'd be good at it. You could get people in a room, like create a relaxed atmosphere and teach some stuff." And so I started doing that, and people really liked them. And so I kept offering these workshops, and people started asking me for one-on-one help. And eventually I went, well, I guess this is what I do for a living. And in that process, I discovered I am able to, to create this safe space for people. I'm able to create an environment where people can learn effectively, can have fun with it. And I do enjoy being around people. I think some people have this misconception about introversion, that it means you're antisocial, you don't like people. I love being around people. I'm a nurturer, but I just also need to decompress afterwards, bring my energy back into balance,
It's
and
great. I
and I
love
find that works for me.
That's great because I think like many things, the introversion extroversion continuum is vastly oversimplified in the world. So I
Yeah,
appreciate you
yeah.
sharing some nuance. And that's what these conversations are about, is helping young people think more perhaps about the complexities of the world and our lives. So thank you. I would love to talk again. Something else you mentioned is the idea of discipline related to exercise. And it sounds like you went hiking for 6 months, which means that couldn't have only been discipline. There must have been something that was naturally inviting about that to you. And then weights, it sounds like it's less exciting, but you feel like it's important. So tell us a little bit about
Mm.
that, the idea of activity, exercise for you. Why do you do it? How does it benefit you?
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, I mean, you don't set out on a through hike unless you really love hiking, which I do. And it's interesting because it's an adventure, and what going out there, it's going to be difficult. But it's just, it's fun, and you're meeting people, and you're out in beautiful nature. So for everyone watching who doesn't know, I hiked a trail called Te Araroa in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Aotearoa is the the indigenous Maori name for New Zealand. And so saying both the English and Maori names for that country is considered a sign of respect. Anyway, and so that's a 3,000-kilometer trail. I took about 5 months and hiked it. And so you're hiking 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours almost every day. And it's a lot of work. Sometimes you're hiking in the rain, sometimes you're exhausted, you just don't want to do it, but you just keep going because you have to have to. You have decided that you're going to get to the end of this thing, you're going to finish it. And sometimes you're with a group and you keep going because your friends motivate you to keep going. And that involved, sometimes, getting up before sunrise and packing up all of your stuff, taking down your tent, stuffing your stuff into your bag and getting out on the road before the sun was even up. And keeping going. You get tired sometime after lunch, you're done, but you still have a little bit more to go because you haven't gotten to your campsite or what have you. And there were definitely days where we would look at each other and go, do we even like hiking? Because we settled on this thing that was, you love hiking and that's why you want to do it for 5 months, but some days you just don't feel like it, or you feel like doing something else that you enjoy, but you can't because you're just out there and you have to hike, you have to get to the next spot. But stubbornness, I think, is the big thing. Not so much discipline, but like stubbornness. Like, I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna get to the end of this. With lifting weights, I do enjoy it. I genuinely do. I used to hate going to the gym until I, started a program where I learned how to lift weights properly. I like being able to do it at home. It's just creating a new habit that you've fallen out of, I find, is the hard part. My weight room is down at the end of the hall. It's out of sight. And so half the time I forget that it's there. And I just, I see, the room that I use as an office, like, oh, time to work now, and then the workout falls by the wayside. So I think it's that process of creating or restarting a habit is the hard part. Not that I don't like it.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Or is it possible that there's like a scale and you like hiking 9 out of 10 and you like lifting weights 6 out of 10, or you think
for sure. Yes. Yeah. I would definitely rather be hiking any day of the week. And of course, in terms of goals for physical fitness, like, they serve different purposes. But yeah, no, I mean, I would absolutely rather be outside nature and
yeah. I know so many people who, I mean, it's just a thing in the world where people say, hey, I'm going to get a gym membership. I'm going to do it. Whatever the thing is, they think they have to, or it's recommended that to be healthy. And then, people drop off, and gyms make all their money from people who never go after February because they bought it as a New Year's resolution. So I think it's an interesting thing. And what I often suggest to people, I'm really blessed to really like physical exercise, and there's lots that I do. And I think it's like so sad for people who don't, but those who haven't found the thing, I always like to say that keep trying different things. It doesn't have to be only one thing, one way for you to get exercise, right? So for you have 3, I heard: lifting weights, hiking, and biking. Is there anything else that you like to do to get exercise?
Gardening is shoveling dirt is really good way to get into shape. So as soon as it's warm out, I'm doing a lot of that.
And you do plants, flowers, vegetables, fruits? What do you do?
All of the above. I've been growing vegetables since I was a kid, but for many years it was just, I had a little pot on my apartment balcony. So last year we actually just bought a house. I have a beautiful yard where the previous owners had planted a lot of flowers. I really like growing food though, so I've been starting up a vegetable garden.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Thank you. Okay. I would love to maybe just return to the hike for a moment and ask you about, what was the genesis of that? Where did that come from? Had you been wanting to do this for a really long time? Do you want to do it again? Tell us a little bit about how that came to be.
Yeah. So I discovered I've always loved hiking. But a few years ago, I watched Wild and found out that long distance hiking is a thing that you can do. You can go on a trail and just keep going and camp and keep hiking and send yourself care packages of food and keep hiking. And I went, wait, you can do that? That's a thing that people do. And so I was obsessed from that moment with this idea of just going for a really long hike and doing more and more of this thing that I love. And so back in 2019, I did a 330-kilometer hike in Newfoundland by myself and loved it. Absolutely loved every second of it. And so since then, I was looking for the next challenge. And so there are a few trails that I considered for my next challenge. And this one, the Te Araroa, is the one that I really settled on. I've always wanted to go to Te Araroa. I've always wanted to, to do one of these long hikes, and it's through the mountains. You go over volcanoes. It's just incredible. There's a canoeing section where instead of hiking, you canoe for 5 days. And I'm just adventurous, and I wanted to try it, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. And so back in 2020, when the province closed down all the hiking trails, I went, okay, that's it. In 3 years, things are going to be more opened up. I'm going to be celebrating a milestone birthday. I'm doing Te Araroa. And so I kind of set that intention and then made it happen.
You want to tell everyone what your milestone birthday was?
Oh yeah, I just turned 40.
Woo! Welcome to the club. How fun. How fun.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
And put it in perspective for anyone who doesn't know kilometers, 3,000 kilometers is half the width of Canada, basically. That's a long, long way to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so just to put this in perspective, you had been working for yourself for a number of years. You had been working to build up a company, and if you've never done that before, it's hard to imagine perhaps how much effort that takes. And then you got your company going, and you're building progress, and then you decide, whoa, I'm going to leave for 6 months and not work. So I'd like to ask you about that, because that's, brave, and, takes a lot of courage and probably a lot of thought and planning as to how you, so tell us, like most people would think, whoa, that seems strange, how did you come to do that?
Yeah, it's bananas. It's not really a thing that normal people do. But yeah, it's one of those things. I knew that it was something that I wanted to accomplish in my life. And I think there are certain big things that you do that there's never a good time to do it. You just have to do it if you're going to do it. And I knew that, you can't predict what's going to happen. And if, you will continue to be physically able to do something. And so I had been planning this for 3 years. And so I, was thinking about this when I was, doing my financial planning and everything, like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm going to be okay, both, while I'm on this trip and after I get back. And I had to kind of prepare my business. And so I have a part-time assistant who was helping me, we were putting together, marketing materials and all kinds of things so that I could continue to be marketing my business while I was away and I wouldn't just disappear. And she was, handling my emails and things like that while I was gone. And so it was just a lot of planning, a lot of work last summer, putting everything in place, communicating with my clients to say, listen, I'm going to be away between these dates. I'm happy to help you up until, this date. And when I come back, I'll definitely be in touch, but I won't be able to help you between October and April. And so if there's anything you need from me, let me know now. Otherwise, I'll see you in the spring. And I'm lucky. I have amazing clients. That's one of the things that, back when I was working for someone else, I was kind of at the mercy of who they wanted me to work with. As an entrepreneur, you get to choose your own clients to a certain extent, and that's a really wonderful freedom to have. So all my clients were amazing and understanding and supportive, and so we kind of put everything on ice. And then when I came back, I was able to come back and say, hey, I'm here. If there are any projects you want to get going, happy to help. And so they're yeah, let's do this. And so I've been spending the past month since I got back, easing my way back into that work and putting together some projects that my clients have been waiting to partner with me on.
Very cool. So I think maybe we'll save it for students if they want to ask you about your lessons learned from the hike. And I know last time we chatted, you were saying you were still processing it a little bit, like the insights and lessons about life and the journey. So maybe we'll pause on that, and the students, hint, might ask you that. Because you started talking about something that I would love to hear a little bit more from you on, having gone from working at a law firm, pretty busy, obviously, I assume lots of hours, worked every day, every week, and now you're an entrepreneur, different type of lifestyle. In your experience, for you, what are the benefits and costs of being an entrepreneur?
Well, the benefits are, autonomy and freedom, for one thing. You get to decide the direction that your career goes, which sometimes when you are working for someone else, they decide what you're going to work on. They decide, which advancement opportunities you're going to have. And you can ask, but you don't get to decide. Whereas as an entrepreneur, you decide what you do, and who you're going to work for. So that's a big one. Having creative control over the work that I do and the messages that I put out there, being able to run my business according to my values is huge for me. And being able to set my own schedule. And yeah, I really like the work that I do, and no one else was doing what I do. And so I get to kind of create my own role and make it look however I want, as long as someone is willing to pay for it. The downsides are because I'm my own boss, I have to be a good boss, and I have to kind of be tough with myself sometimes, which it's hard to do, right? It's hard to make yourself do something that you don't feel like doing, but you just have to know, I'm not going to get paid if I don't do this thing, if I don't get out there and market, and if I don't get out there and make sales, if I don't put together this video, how are people going to find me? How are people going to know that I can work for them? So that's a big one. The risk, it took me a while after starting my business to be able to pay myself a salary, because you have to invest a lot of time and money into building it up to a point where it's profitable. And that means, you're putting in a bunch of free work at the beginning and not really knowing if it's going to pay off. And then I think the other part is kind of I am responsible for all of the good stuff and everything that goes wrong. There's no one I can point to and say, this is above my pay grade. Like, I am the boss, and I have to make sure that it's working. And no one is going to come along and clean up after me if I make a mistake. So I need to kind of be responsible and stand behind the decisions that I make.
So it sounds like, on balance, for you, it's a fair trade-off, and you enjoy being an entrepreneur.
I do. Yeah. It is. It's more work than working for someone else, I find, but it can be, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I think it's good to say it. Sorry, what was that?
But the work is more fun.
Yeah. I think it's important to say that it likely is more work. Whereas sometimes the perception people see online, so-and-so has their own business runs itself, they play golf all day, or they garden all day, or whatever. And that's really not the case almost ever. Even when it appears that someone is like that and they are a billionaire, they are still taking on a lot of stress and doing work, maybe just not in the traditional fashion. So it's important to keep that in mind.
And you don't get the same division between your work and your life that people do that have a job that they can just walk away from. Sometimes as an entrepreneur, you're losing sleep at night because you're thinking about business stuff. And after I left my law career and started my business for a full year, every morning I would wake up and go, what was I thinking? Maybe I should go get a real job. It's stressful, and you don't get to just put that away at the end of the day.
Wow. So for a year you would wake up.
Yeah. I had so much doubt when I got started.
Yeah. So what helped you kind of push through that doubt?
Making progress was the biggest thing. If I hadn't grown, if I hadn't built up a reputation where people would come to me and say, hey, I want your help, I would have, kept wondering, why am I doing this? You're putting in that work, you need to see a return on it. And so seeing a return on that work really helped. Having people around who got me really helped. Having a community of people who are experiencing something similar and could relate and could share their successes and offer advice, it's huge. I could not have done this without the community that I have. I think those are the big things. Having the community, having the support, and seeing it pay off, even if it pays off more slowly than you might like.
Yeah, making progress. It's been well documented in the research in psychology, as I'm sure you've read too, that's the number one factor for human motivation, is just seeing some progress. That's the thing that above all else helps us keep going.
Yeah.
So on the other end, then I'd be one of the questions we like to ask is around failures. And having read your biography, and had chatted with about this with you before, you don't see your departure from law, or having gotten 2 law degrees and spent a lot of your life, 10 years of your life devoted to this profession. I know that you don't see that as a failure, and I'm curious to, because we like to talk about failures, but from the outside some people might perceive it that way, and I'd like to know why was that not a failure for you?
Mm. Yeah, and I think a lot of people within the legal profession would see it as a failure. There's this idea of, can you hack it or can't you? And when I left, I was kind of implicitly saying, no, I can't hack it. Like
Mm.
I didn't want to. It was not healthy, and a lot of people in the legal profession. This is not to paint everyone with a broad brush, but a lot of people in the legal profession are not healthy and are not happy.
Mm.
So yeah, it was hard for me to admit that this is not a good fit for me and I need um, to make a change. I think the reason I don't see it as a failure is because I worked really hard to get to where I did, and I walked away with a lot of skills and a lot of insights that I still use every single day. I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't been through all of those steps, because
Mm.
they taught me so much. They taught me how to run a business. They taught me how to stand up and perform under pressure, which is what I now teach. Um, they taught me how to think clearly and express myself clearly, which again is what I teach. And so I needed all of those experiences to get to the place where I am now, which is a really, really satisfying and fulfilling place.
It's great. That's yeah, that's a really nice story to highlight what we try to encourage, with our students, as to reframe the idea of failure and see it
Mhm.
as useful lessons. And I can say too, I've mentioned this to you before, but many people in the law profession write a lot, and you're an excellent writer. So I'm sure that was vastly improved in all those years you spent. So it can be painful sometimes to go through those things, but I noticed that's one example of the skills that you bring with you, right, into your new profession. So, okay, great. I'm sure it wasn't easy. I'd love to know as well, we're talking a lot about work, so maybe just to pinpoint a lesson that you've learned about work over the years.
Yeah, one thing that I have found, I always believed that, you find a topic that interests you and then find a job in that topic. But what I do, I've never had a passion for public speaking. I found a thing that I'm good at doing, that I enjoy doing, and then I made a living out of it. And then as I was going through that process, I started examining more, how do people communicate? If I watch a stand-up comedian, which I really enjoy doing, what are they doing? How are they
Mm.
establishing their stage presence? How are they telling a story? And so I like analyzing the way that people communicate, and I discovered a passion for this, but I didn't start out with a passion for public
Mm.
speaking. And so I think that's a big thing, is thinking beyond just like what am I interested in to what do I enjoy and why do I enjoy it. And I find that's a really good way to discover a career path. So on Parks and Rec, there's one character I love. Like I loved this plot line. There's one character who was trying to figure out her career path, and her husband got her to make a list of the things that she likes. She likes dogs, and she liked being in charge of this group and all of this stuff. And she said none of these have anything in common. And he went, but let's look at why you like them. What do they have in common? And they discovered she likes telling people what to do and solving problems. And so she found a job that involved telling people what to do and solving problems. And so it's not just like what do you like, but why do you like it? What do you like about it? Is how you can figure out a path for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice, and I like how you articulate it, differently than me, but it's something I talk about with people a lot of times, because you're right. People say, I love video games. I want to
Mm,
make video games. I love sports. I want to be in sports management. And
yeah.
so I really like this idea. So for you, then, it's more complicated, but what would you say you are passionate about?
Oh, I love this question. I am passionate about helping people transform the way they feel about themselves and the way that they interact with the world. And so what I love about the work that I do is, you know, you wouldn't think that teaching public speaking you change lives, but genuinely I've had people tell me that I've changed their lives because they let go of this fear. They are free to express themselves. They are free to move towards their goals. And that's what I am passionate about, is seeing people blossom.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's a great, I think, lesson, and that you would probably admit, I assume, that you could be doing that in any number of ways,
Yeah.
but public speaking is where it landed, and that feels good. And so you keep doing it and evolving.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we'll wrap up here in a few minutes. We talked a lot about your trip to New Zealand, but I'm curious to know, as you know, students love to talk and hear about travel. So is that your favorite trip, or is there another place that you've been that you would call your favorite?
You know, this is such a hard question, and I feel like I should say that it's my favorite. And like I had an amazing time, but I think my favorite place I've traveled is still Vietnam. And I think because that is a place that challenged me the most and surprised me the most. So I've actually been to Vietnam twice. The first time I went in with all of these expectations. People said, oh, you know, you have to look out for this, this, and this so you don't get robbed. Look out for this, this, and this so you don't get ripped off. And I went in with a lot of fear of, you know, people out to get me. And my first night in the country, I was there by myself when I arrived. And I was so overwhelmed in Ho Chi Minh City by all the people and the noise and by, you know, this fear that I had, that I went and I bought a banh mi outside my hotel, and I ate my banh mi in my hotel room by myself, and I cried from just being so overwhelmed. And over the next few days, I had just kind of these really funny, you know, kind of culture shock moments. And I went to a smaller town and I met this guy who drives a Ciclo, which is kind of like a bicycle taxi. And he, he rented me a bike. So I got to go, you know, biking along some back pathways in the countryside. And he was so kind, and we had some great conversations. And then I just started meeting people and just getting to know people on their own terms. And it became just the most wonderful experience. Just kind of like it just opened up my heart and let me experience something really new in a way that I was not fearful the way I had been when I started. And then I made a really good friend there and went back a few years later to see her.
Very cool. And the second time, you were open right from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's great. I love it. Yeah. So just getting over that initial, the preconceived notions, the stereotypes, the fear, and embracing it. Was there anything in particular, do you think, that helped you get over the fear and just kind of go for it?
That's a great question. So this guy, this Ciclo driver, like he was a big part of it. Like, while I was biking, I bought some fruit from a vendor. And when I met up with him, he was like, you know, how much did you pay for that? Because he wanted to make sure I hadn't gotten ripped off, and I hadn't. So that was nice. But he was so concerned for my well-being and, you know, curious, and had like, you know, these really interesting life stories to tell. And so I was like, oh, people are just people, right? Wherever you go, you know, people crave connection. There are also some, just some like really funny moments where you have to let yourself loosen up. Like, I hope this isn't too much information. I was on like an intercity van, and at one point they stop on the side of the highway and they're like, bathroom break. And so we're just on the side of the highway, so I had to pee in a ditch, and there was a lady with a water buffalo there, and I'm looking around going, oh, what is happening right now? You know, these are just the kind of weird experiences that happen when you are traveling, that, you know, you would never have thought this is a thing that is going to happen in my life. And you laugh at it and you go, okay, like this is just what it is. I just need to let it happen. And like little moments like that.
Yeah. And it helps you, at least for me, a lot of those stories help me realize the world is not such a serious place all the time, as much as we think it is, at certain junctures. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. We haven't chatted much about, specifically about relationships. So is there a lesson that you've learned about relationships that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I have learned about relationships is that you need to have different ones. Like there is no one person in your life who's going to meet all of your needs. And I have noticed so many times that in our culture we tend to expect, like when you're young, like your best friend to be everything to you and spend all their time with you. When you're older, people have this expectation of romantic partners. Your partner has to be your best friend and you spend all your time together and you share all these things and there are no secrets. And I find that that doesn't work well for me. I was in relationships in the past where, like we were best friends and we spent all our time together, but I was just unhappy because we actually weren't a good fit for each other. And now, I've been with my partner, Andre, for 11 years, and we have a lot of our own interests and we like to spend time on our own. He didn't come hiking with me because that sounds like hell to him, sleeping in a tent for 5 months. And so he stayed here and I went and I made new friends and had an adventure on my own. Like I have my hiking friends and I have my improv friends and I have my business friends, and I go spend time with them, and he has his soccer friends and his nerd friends and his bro friends, and he goes and spends time with them. And like there's no jealousy. It's just we have our life together and we have our separate things, and there are different people who can meet the needs that we can't meet for each other. And I find that is a much more relaxing and secure way to approach a relationship. Is this person isn't going to meet all of my needs, but I have other people who can do that for me as well.
Yeah, I think that's great, a great message. And also that we, as you described, we each need to uncover those things for ourselves. Different people have different personalities and different things. Different people want different things from different relationships, and it takes time and effort to find those out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, last question to wrap up with. We always ask the same question. We call these good life conversations. As you well know, the world is complicated sometimes for young people today, and they'll often look into screens and they see these messages about what it means to perhaps superficially live a good life. So we're trying to talk more holistically about that. So what is the advice you'd like to offer for any young people listening to go out and create a good life for themselves?
Yeah. I think life is full of ups and downs, and sometimes you feel like you're on top of things, and sometimes you feel like nothing is going your way, and sometimes you're having to work to kind of establish yourself, to kind of prove yourself before you're going to be rewarded with certain things. Sometimes you have to take on the responsibilities that maybe you don't want, but life is that way. But through all of this and these ups and downs, there's no destination to this journey. And so one thing that we were told in law school when we started was make sure that you are exercising regularly. Don't say, like I know you're busy, but don't say I'm going to start exercising when I'm not so busy, because you're never going to be less busy than you are now, right? And so it's like everything that we go through, we're not reaching for some place that we're going to arrive. Like this is life. And so take care of your physical and mental health today. Take care of your relationships today. Live your life today, because it's the only one that you get, and there's no place you're going to arrive at where suddenly you're going to have time to take care of yourself and you're going to be happy and you're going to have enough money to meet all your needs. There's no destination. It's just where we are and what you do with the day that is right in front of you.
Yeah, you're never going to have the time that you think you're going to have. That's a really, I think, so do it now. I like that a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, Alex. And, the students, I'm sure will look forward to asking you their own questions very soon.
Can't wait.
Thanks for listening, everybody. This has been another Good Life Conversation. We hope to have you at the next one.